The strip was gone, the mountain was falling. And the wind didn't just blow, it punched. Command said abort. The radio said wait. The clock said there was no time left. On the far side of the valley, a field hospital was running on one generator. And a prayer. Kids, medics, and a 10-person rescue team were trapped by landslides that kept moving like a living thing. Helicopters tried and failed. Drones got knocked around like toys. Everyone agreed no fixed-wing pilot would even try to land here. Everyone, except one. She didn't write a request. She didn't ask for clearance. She zipped her flight suit, looked at the map only once, and said, "I'm going." When the Hercules engine spun up, ground crew walked out of their bays just to see. Because if she was rolling, something was about to happen that shouldn't. Be possible. If this story finds you, maybe you need the same reminder they did that day. Sometimes the door you need isn't built yet, you make it with your hands. So wherever you are, couch, bus, break room, lean in. This isn't about a Kia plane. It's about one person who refused to let night, wind, and fear make the rules. The call that froze the operations trailer was only 7 words long. Ridge failing, patience moving. We can't hold. After that, just static and the sound of rocks. The valley had a name on maps, Ashfold, but the pilots called it the Bowl. High walls. Bad air. Cross winds that switched sides like a trick. The gravel strip at the mission clinic had been sliced in half by a fresh crack. You could still land there, someone said, if you were crazy and lucky and had wings made of prayers. Captain Naya. Rio stood against the wall with her arms folded tight and her jaw set. She had flown in worse weather, but not with a landslide clock and children on stretchers. The flight director pointed at the sat feed. No lights, no beacons. No usable runway length for a C-130. We wait for daylight. She answered without looking away from the map. They don't have daylight. A silence you could taste. If you miss, we lose the aircraft, he said. If I miss, she said, we already lost them. They called her ground ghost, which made no sense until you watched her fly a heavy bird like it was listening to the dirt. She had no famous parents, no perfect grades. What she had was time in bad places. She learned downdrafts by smell, crosswinds by the color of dust, and short landings from old cargo dogs who laughed at fear, but never disrespected it. Her first mountain landing was in training, when a microburst shoved her craft sideways so hard the wingtip kissed air over a pine. She didn't fight the wind. She went with it and brought the plane down like a hand setting a cup on a shelf. The instructor wrote 6 words, seize the ground like water, remember. Back at Ashfold, the plan was simple and insane. She would go in blackout, no strobes, no landing lights. She would create her own runway by landing across the longest unbroken line of gravel, not along it. A cross strip landing on a broken strip. Nobody teaches that. But the slope and the wind angle made it the only thing with a chance. If she got in, she'd keep engines hot, load fast, and roll uphill to a dead-end cliff, pivot on brakes, and drop back down the same track. If she got out, well, then the wind would get a vote. They gave her 10 minutes to prep. The loadmaster clipped in and checked tie-downs twice. Stretchers, warm blankets, extra straps. Flares for the ground team if the generator died. The crew chief, a kid with grease under his nails, jogged beside the ladder and held up a small strip of cloth. Hand-stitched. White thread on black, make runway. She tucked it under her collar. You remember Kun Peak, he said. She smiled with only her eyes. I remember every rock that tried me, wheels up. The valley swallowed them fast. The moon was a fingernail. GPS blinked in and out like a bad promise. The heads-up was honest enough to be useless in the gusts. She flew by what she trusted. The seat, the sound, the way the engines felt under her palms. The first drop of air hit them like a missing stair. The second came from the side. The bowl loved to play. Talk to me, the loadmaster said, voice steady but low. We're going to walk in, she said. Not drive, walk. At 400 feet at GL, the radios began to stutter. At 300, they hushed. At 200, she could taste dirt in the air. The bowl walls rose up like dark shoulders. Somewhere ahead, the clinic. Somewhere under them, the broken strip. She swept once with infrared. Heat signatures glowed in clumps. People. Generators. A crawler of dust shifting across the hillside. Slow but not stopping. They're moving, she said. The mountain's not done. The loadmaster leaned to the side window. I've got overflow vehicles, north fence, 2 trucks at least. She held the vector in her head like a thread and spoke to the dark. Okay, Bo, show me your teeth. The first pass wasn't a landing, it was a look. She dropped to 150, leveled with a tiny touch, and rode a wave of wind that wanted to tip her. It didn't because she wouldn't let it. The gravel flashed by, a pale stripe with a wound across it. She saw the crack edge, the clean, flat bite where the earth had split. The left half was junk, the right half had a line. Not long enough. Not straight, but it had a line. We're doing the cross strip, she said. Uphill first. The loadmaster didn't swear, which is how she knew he trusted her. Second pass. Engines held a note that sounds like courage if you've flown long enough. She set flaps and slid the bird into the wind like a key into a lock. Cross strip means your wheels touch and your brain screams, because the runway runs the wrong way. She didn't care about screaming. She cared about speed, sink rate, and that little patch of gravel that didn't give a damn about policy. Touch, bounce, hold. The tires bit. The frame shuddered. Every bolt remembered it was metal. She braked like she was holding someone's wrist over a cliff. The plane stopped with 20 strides to spare. No one moved for 1 heartbeat. Then the world ran. Medics waved with elbows. Stretchers arrived like a tide. Tiny shoes. Oxygen masks. A nurse whose face was dust and light. The team leader handed her a slate with names and numbers and looked into the cockpit like he was meeting a ghost. How long do we have? He asked. She looked at the hillside. Rocks rolled without sound. 2 minutes to load, 1 to turn. He nodded once. Then we'll run. Trucks, the loadmaster said. She saw them, finally, at the fence line. 2 pickups riding the broken ground like they hated their shocks. Headlights off, engines loud. Not friendly. She didn't have guns. This was not that kind of bird, but she had engines. Big ones. Hold, she said to the ground crew. Keep loading. She raised the throttle just enough to throw wind and dust at the fence corner. Gravel became weather. Headlights vanished into their own storm. The truck slowed, then stopped, then backed up because physics doesn't care about bravado. Last. Stretcher, someone yelled. The aircraft sagged different now, heavy with lives. She eased forward up the slope until the cliff wall said, no more. Brakes on. Rudder hard over. The nose swung in a half circle that made teeth ache. The cliff sat quiet and close. Ahead, the line she had drawn on air with a promise. We're dropping down, she said. Hold everything that can fall. The loadmaster laughed once, short. She let the plane roll, and then she didn't let it. Gravity wanted speed, she wanted control. They met in the middle. The cross strip turned to blur under them. A gust pushed. She gave it space and took it back. At the edge, the bowl tried one last trick. The gust switched sides. The wing dipped. The wingtip had a conversation with a very rude rock and decided not to meet today. She pushed power like a shout. The plane unglued from the earth and climbed into nothing. Climbouts in the bowl are jokes. You don't climb. You thread. She threaded. The wall on the left was closer than comfort, but not closer than skill. The wall on the right was a rumor. The wind was a liar and a friend. At 300 feet, the radio said hello like they hadn't abandoned her. Ash fold, status? Someone asked. Airborne, she said. Everything that fits is with us. The cheer over the net sounded like people at the edge of a cliff who just stepped back. They flew black for 20 minutes that felt like 50 years. The loadmaster called out vitals. A kid coughed and then didn't, because the oxygen did its job. The generator at the clinic finally died behind them, a pinprick on the scope. In the trailer back at base, the flight director put his hands on his head and laughed, because sometimes laughter is all the body can do when the rules just broke themselves, and said thank you. Touchdown at base was not pretty. Pretty is for posters. She brought the bird in honest and hot, tires hot, brakes hotter, and rolled to a stop with smoke coming off feelings no one would name. The ramp dropped in daylight, real and bright, rushed inside. People clapped. Some cried. The nurse from the clinic put a hand on the fuselage and whispered something that wasn't for microphones. The brief was short. You ignored guidance. We didn't have time. You crossed the strip. We didn't have a strip. They'll write it up in some binder as a study. They'll change one paragraph in a manual no one reads until they need it. It won't be called the Rio's turn, but if you ever see a big bird draw an X across a broken runway and make it look like Grace, you'll know where they learned it. Later, in a classroom that smelled like coffee and old maps, a young pilot asked her, "Ma'am, how did you know you wouldn't run out of runway?" She looked at the board for a long second, then out the window where the wind was playing with a flag. "I didn't," she said. "I knew I wouldn't run out of courage."